We will now go straight through to the speakers. I would like to first of all call upon the Presidential Commissioner for Humanitarian Affairs and Overseas Cyprus of the Republic of Cyprus, Mr. Fotis Fodiou, for his introductory remarks. Unfortunately, Mr. Fodiou had a prior engagement and cannot be with us live tonight, but he has sent us his recording of his introductory remarks. Theodora.
Honorable dignitaries in UK and around the world, distinguished members of our diaspora, dear friends. It's a distinct honor and a great pleasure to be here online with you today at this virtual seminar entitled Citizenship, Ethnicity, Freedom and Democracy under the Rule of Law. I would like first and foremost to convey to you the heartfelt greetings of President Anastasiadis and to express our collective, deepest gratitude for everything you have been doing all these years in support of Cyprus in the United Kingdom. Before I move on, let me congratulate the organizers and especially the coordinator of Lobby of Cyprus in the UK, Theo Theodorou, for this initiative and thank them for the opportunity to participate. Ladies and gentlemen, I will concentrate my intervention on the 47th anniversary of the Turkish invasion and occupation of Cyprus. 47 years ago, Turkey invaded Cyprus, violating basically all known rules of international law, including the Charter of the United Nations. Unfortunately, we are still witnessing the aggressiveness from Turkey against an EU member state, especially recently with threats to resume illegal actions within the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus and the creation of a new unacceptable fait accompli within the enclosed area of Famagusta in violation of relevant Security Council resolutions. Yesterday, we all witnessed the escalation of the provocative actions of Turkey in the fenced area of Varosha. As you are all aware, any action on the ground towards a direction opposite from the transfer of the area to the administration of the UN so as to allow for the return of the lawful inhabitants of the area to their homes is a violation of the provisions of the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. Dear friends, our efforts focus on reaching a comprehensive, just and viable solution to the Cyprus problem based on the relevant UN Security Council resolutions and international law. In reaching a settlement, our objectives include, among others, establishing a truly independent, sovereign, and functional federal state, free from any foreign dependencies, either through guarantees, the right of military intervention, and the presence of foreign troops, and safeguarding the human rights and fundamental freedoms of all Cypriots and secure the values and principles of the European Union. Distinguished guests, from a humanitarian point of view, the most tragic event that happened since 1974 is that of missing persons. During and after the Turkish invasion, thousands of Greek Cypriots were arrested and held in concentration camps in Cyprus by Turkish soldiers and paramilitaries operating under the Turkish army. 47 years since the Turkish invasion, around 800 Greek Cypriots are still missing. Regrettably, progress on this serious problem during the past few years is disappointing, to say the least. Time is running out. The basic reason for this situation is the refusal of Turkey to cooperate sincerely and constructively to solve even the humanitarian aspect of the tragedy. Turkey should show respect to the European institutions by implementing the 2001 judgment of the European Court of Human Rights and subsequent resolutions of the Council of Europe, United Nations, and other international organizations. In this respect, Turkey has to provide the CMP with all information from its military archives concerning burial places, inform the committee of the places of reburial of remains that were purposely removed from the original places of burial. As a result of this, only small skeletal elements are located. The worst, however, is that the families receive for burial only small parts of skeletal elements of their loved ones, something that prevents the family from proceeding to a closure. I take this opportunity, dear friends, to kindly request you to contribute in whatever way you consider appropriate in the United Kingdom or elsewhere to assist the efforts to solve the tragedy of the missing persons to the sake of the families concerned. Dear friends, in Cyprus, the 1974 Turkish invasion and the continuing occupation has caused massive destruction to the cultural heritage of the island. Turkey continues to this day to ignore binding international treaties for the protection of cultural heritage. According to the records, it is estimated that more than 20,000 religious icons have been stolen and more than 550 churches and their cemeteries have been looted. Cyprus actively promotes the adoption of measures against the destruction and illicit trafficking of cultural heritage in all fora. Turkey must demonstrate respect to human rights and comply with all relevant obligations, including the full implementation of all judgments of the European Court of Human Rights, both in her capacity as a candidate country to the EU and as a member state of the Council of Europe. Dear friends, thank you once again, and I wish you every success in the deliberations of your seminar.
I would like to thank the Presidential Commissioner for his introductory. And I think the focus there should be that we, the people of Cyprus and the diaspora, must also take action, and we must be united. Could I now call on our next speaker, the High Commissioner of the Republic of Cyprus in London, Mr. Andreas Gabouris. High Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Theo. Good evening, everybody. Good evening to participants and those watching this event. Let me start off by thanking the organizers, Lobby for Cyprus, for putting this event on tonight. Theo, you and I go back quite a few moons, so I know the work that the lobby does, and very much appreciated in, together with others, keeping the Cyprus issue on the radar screen. That in itself is not an easy thing to do. Hence the importance of events such as tonight, and as the Presidential Commissioner said, the community, the diaspora, being actively engaged wherever they are in keeping this issue on the radar. The Presidential Commissioner, I think, has gone into enough detail when we talk about the Cyprus problem. I'm not going to go into various elements of it, but I thought it would be useful just to bring you up to speed where we are at the moment. And I think it's vitally important that when we talk about the Cyprus problem, we put it into the only context that it should be. And that is, this is an illegal invasion, an illegal occupation with continuous violations of human rights and fundamental freedoms by Turkey. And that is something that I think we always need to remind our interlocutors when we talk about the Cyprus problem. Because to be perfectly frank, when one looks at the Cyprus problem and juxtaposes it with what is going on in, let's say, Syria, Iraq, Libya, where you have deaths on a daily basis. Thankfully, we don't have that in Cyprus. We don't have bombs going off, etc. But what it does is that it leads some, and for some it's convenient, to say, well, there may not be peace in Cyprus, but there's quiet. And when you compare that to those other examples that I gave, it is easy for some to forget the issue, which is an invasion and occupation. Peace is not the absence of war. Peace is the presence of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. And that is missing in Cyprus with a continuous Turkish occupation. I think those are some of the issues that we need to remind people of. Amongst the participants, many people have been stalwarts for many, many years in pushing wherever they are for a solution of the Cyprus problem, and I'd like to thank them. I'm not going to name them individually. They know who they are, and I'm very grateful because I've known a lot of them for many, many years. 47 years is 47 years too many, and we have to continue pushing to get a solution that reunites the island, the people, the social fabric of that island in the Mediterranean. A solution when we know the framework that has been established by zone by Commonwealth Federation with a single citizenship, single international personality, a single sovereignty with political equality as defined by UN Security Council resolutions. Cyprus, President Anastasiadis, have not moved the goalposts. It is Turkey that continuously moves the goalposts. And the latest movement of the goalposts is the two states, which Turkey and Mr. Tatar in the occupied area are now pushing, or sovereign equality. There is only one state on Cyprus. There is only one people, and that's the Cypriot people. And I'm pleased to see that I think the international community, lock, stock and barrel, has said that this is a non-starter. There is a framework, and we want to get back to the negotiating table as soon as we can to continue from where we left off at Crans-Montana in 2017. So the focus of the international community should be on where the problem lies. And the problem lies in Ankara and with Mr. Tatar, but predominantly in Ankara, because we all know that that is where the Cyprus problem will be solved. Yesterday, as Theo mentioned, and as the Presidential Commissioner mentioned, marked 47 years since the invasion. And Mr. Erdogan, inverted commas, to celebrate the invasion, went to the occupied part of Cyprus, where together with Mr. Tatar, they announced that another area of the fenced area of Varosha would be opened. This is in direct violation of Security Council resolutions on the Varosha 550, 789. It's another phase in a series of phases with regards to Varosha that we have seen, that creeping, what I call creeping encroachment that has started off from last, from last October and is continuing. And I think what needs to be heard loud and clear by Ankara is that this is a violation, and words are important. Words are important, and we can't avoid using the correct words. This is, and I'm happy to see that Secretary of State Blinken used the word condemn, because that is the word that should be used. Okay, this is a violation, it's condemnable, because we know where we're heading with this. Okay, it challenges and makes even more difficult the efforts for a solution of the Cyprus problem. And Varosha is not just another issue, it's a core issue. And UN Security Council resolutions have been abundantly clear on the status of Varosha and who is responsible for that status. It is Turkey, not Mr. Tatar, but Turkey itself. So the finger should be aimed directly at Turkey and Mr. Erdogan. If one looks at Cyprus, and I want to turn Cyprus into another direction as well. Today in the Eastern Mediterranean, Turkey is a consumer of stability. It's not a purveyor of stability. If you look at the region and you look at Turkey and its relations with the countries of the region, there is no one country there that one can say that it has a meaningful relationship with, where good neighborly relations is paramount. But I think if you look at Cyprus, and this is something that I was very pleased to be involved with in my previous position at the ministry. If you look at what we have tried to create through the trilateral mechanisms, together with Greece engaging in trilateral cooperation with countries of the region, with Israel, with Lebanon, with the Palestinians, with Egypt, with Jordan, and going further afield to the Emirates, countries that look to Cyprus as another vista into their relationship with the European Union, that look to Cyprus and Greece to see what areas of cooperation they can engage in. And I mention this because it's important to realize that Cyprus has a value added. It has an important value added in the region. And I think more and more it is being recognized as having that strategic value added that maybe before people weren't looking at, because we were always seen within the vortex of a country's relationship with Turkey. And within that framework, there wasn't much oxygen for Cyprus. I'd like to believe that that is slowly changing. But be that as it may, it is an element that I think is relatively new to how people look at Cyprus. And of course, you know, within the European Union, we have our value added there. We are the country that's in a vitally important region for the European Union, and also a vitally important region for the country that I'm serving in at the moment, the United Kingdom. If I can use the analogy of a mosaic, in any mosaic you have large pieces and small pieces, and each piece is unique, but an integral part of that overall mosaic. That is how Cyprus is within the mosaic known as the European Union. Small, but an integral and important piece to that mosaic. So with those few thoughts on, you know, the Cyprus of today that is, I think, respected for what it can offer, and you can only imagine how much more important Cyprus could be with a solution of the Cyprus problem. Juxtapose that with what happened yesterday, a continuing occupation, the illegal activities of Turkey in our exclusive economic zone, and that is another dimension which is relatively new, the whole energy sector, where Cyprus is cooperating very closely with other countries of the region to provide energy security, something which is recognized as far afield as the United States as well. So there is the solution of the Cyprus problem is important, not just for Cyprus. And it is, of course, that is the beginning for us. A solution needs to happen for the Cypriots so we can reunify our island. But I believe a solution of the Cyprus problem would also send a wider message, a message of hope to the region, a message that the United Nations, under whose auspices the efforts, the Secretary General auspices the efforts for a solution of the Cyprus problem are, shows that the UN still has an important role to play, and we believe it does. But ultimately, a solution of the Cyprus problem rests with the international community being willing to press the country that's responsible for a non-solution of the Cyprus problem, Turkey, to get back to the table to negotiate a solution within the framework, a solution that is first and foremost in the interests of the Cypriots, not one that is tailor-made to what Turkey considers to be its own interests. And Turkey's interests, in any case, would be served with a solution of the Cyprus problem. I'll stop there and thank you again, Theo, for giving me this opportunity to say a few words, and I wish you all the best for tonight, and thank you again for all your efforts, for the lobby's efforts as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. Thank you very much, Andreas. I know that you took time from your busy schedule. You had to leave at 7 o'clock, but you stayed on, and I thank you for that. And how important that you covered some very salient points that Lobby for Cyprus has been championing for so many years, especially the geopolitical one, the cultural heritage one. And I think at the end of the day, what we need to look at is for us, the people in the diaspora, as well as back home, to make sure that we maintain and keep these messages live towards our government here, as well as towards the international community. I thank you very much. Can I pass now on to Kostas Frangiskidis?
Thank you, Theo. And again, thank you, High Commissioner, very much for your presentation. I'm very pleased indeed to now introduce the Right Honourable Member of Parliament for Hendon, Matthew Offord MP, who's also active in pursuing the rights of and the human rights of Cypriots, as he's the chairman of the Conservative Friends of Cyprus in the UK Parliament. He's a very good friend of Cyprus, and so I'll pass over to Matthew to give us his commentary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, can I say it's a great pleasure to follow His Excellency, an ambassador for your country who is admired and respected within Whitehall and further afield. But I attend the meeting today in great sadness. Sadness that we continue to meet in the way we do to discuss the division of Cyprus, a division that continues today. Nicosia, the capital of Cyprus, is the only divided capital in the European Union, something that greatly concerns myself and many people. The division of the rest of the island continues to be a great tragedy. I often hear from my constituents here in Hendon about the settlements in Israel, and often critics say how they are illegal under international law. But however, there is no commentary about the illegal occupation of Cyprus. We hear again and again of the problems in Israel, but never once are there any UN resolutions on Cyprus to address the same point. Settlers from the Turkish mainland have been transported, and in many ways they act like those birds who take over the nest of others and throw out the baby birds and continue to receive food and sustenance from the parents until they eventually come too big for the nest and move on. And it's the same with these people who have taken land, property and businesses from Cypriots in the occupied part of Cyprus. Many of these people are not Cypriots, they're Turkish settlers. On the one occasion in Parliament, I was able to raise this issue. I was ruled out of order. Never have I seen any early day motions, never have I seen any orders, never have I seen any 10-minute rule bills on the issue of settlements on the island of Cyprus. So we should remind the international community that an international crime is continuing to occur on the island. So for 47 years, many people, several of them here today, have been refused access to their rightful and legal property in places like Famagusta. However, we should take some comfort from the Orum's legal case, which after a protracted legal argument concluded that Greek Cypriots have the right to reclaim land in the occupied area of Cyprus after they were displaced by the Turkish settlers. For many years, I and others have called for the release of Varosha, but it continues to be used as a political bargaining chip by occupied forces. In preparation for today, I'd looked at the amount of times that the location was raised by Turkey and how it could be something that could be negotiated, but it never comes to fruition. And so the announcement made yesterday during the visit of Turkish President Erdogan to Cyprus regarding the reopening and resettlement of that area, constituting just about 3.5% of the fenced off area, is a concerning one. The announcement runs contrary to the UN Security Council's resolutions and to the Security Council presidential statement of October of last year, which called for Turkey to halt and reverse its actions in Varosha. I'm pleased that the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom strongly supports the relevant Security Council's resolutions covering the issue of Varosha and calls for all parties to comply with them. As a guarantor power, it is vital that the UK takes a hard line on this issue, and we must discuss the issue as a matter of urgency with other Security Council members. But most of all, we need to ensure that no actions occur which undermines the Cypriot settlement process or increases tensions on the island. Now, the Lobby for Cyprus is a powerful voice, and I know it remains committed to supporting a settlement for a unitary Republic of Cyprus that is based on what you call the 3 Rs. That is the removal of all Turkish occupational troops, the humane repatriation of Turkish colonists who were transferred to occupied Cyprus to alter the demography of the island, and a right to return of all refugees and internally displaced persons without restrictions or preconditions as called for by UN resolutions. It is only by doing this that we can seek a resolution that will be acceptable to the whole of the island and ensures that the international community not only respects but acknowledges that Cyprus is one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for your continued support and for reminding people of the factual and legal realities. I now turn to the Right Honourable Bambos Haralambos, Member of Parliament for Enfield Southgate, and also Shadow Immigration Minister and Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Cyprus. Bambos, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you to Lobby for inviting me to speak tonight, and for your continued work in raising the issue and keeping it very high on the agenda. I remember going on demonstrations when I was still at school about Cyprus, and I can't believe it's now 47 years since the invasion and occupation of 1974. And what we have today is Turkey continuing to up the ante. So we've seen with the deliberately provocative actions by President Erdogan on the anniversary of the invasion, going to Varosha and opening 3.5% of Varosha. It's designed purely to provoke the international community. And why is he doing that? Because he's got no friends in the region. He's got no friends in Israel, he's got no friends in Egypt, he's got no friends in Libya. He's isolated, and he's using this as like a spoilt child to draw attention to himself and his needs in the region. And it's a clear breach of international law, and we need to make sure that we use as much influence as we can to make sure that these breaches are called out and the international community gathers together to put pressure on Turkey so that they know they're not allowed to get away with these breaches. As the High Commissioner pointed out, there's this gradual encroachment. What you see is Turkey trying to see how much they can get away with. And they keep pushing it, and when they see no reaction from the international community, they go a bit further. And that's clearly unacceptable. And this has been the game plan for Turkey, has been to seek to have a divided island, a two-state partition, and that's what they're after. And by the international community not acting, not being as loud as we want them to, then that's clearly a concern and something we need to like strengthen and challenge. Obviously, we've had the UN-sponsored talks. You know, we had the initial talks back in earlier this year, and the progress was disappointing because it seems that Turkey is still hell-bent on having a permanently divided island. But we need to keep faith, and we need to keep sort of we need to keep going forward. And what we also need to do is make sure that we work with the Turkish Cypriot community, who I know do want a solution, and they've been crowded out by the settlers in the north. We had the elections in the north, which the majority of the Turkish Cypriots voted for Mr. Akinci, but it was the settlers who decided it, and there was obviously interference from Turkey in the outcome of that result. And again, that's something that needs to be called out, and we do need to ask our international friends to call out such irregularities and interference. We do need to show our strong support, solidarity for the bizonal, bicommunal federation solution, which is the one we all want to bring about. And as a parliamentarian, as the vice chair of the all-party parliamentary group on Cyprus, I know that this issue has cross-party support, and we're very committed as parliamentarians to raise the issue whenever we can. Unfortunately, the opportunities are quite limited. We've not had a debate on Cyprus for quite some time, and I'd be very keen for us to try and have a debate about Cyprus. It's been a while since we've had one. Unfortunately, because of the restrictions in Parliament, it's been quite difficult to have a debate. Until recently, we had to be limited as to the numbers of people that can be in the House of Commons chamber or in Westminster Hall for Westminster Hall debates. But those things are changing, and I think the time might now be ready for us to have a debate about Cyprus. So I think we need to raise that. We also need to raise it not just in relation to foreign affairs, but also in terms of international trade, because the UK has signed trade deals with a number of countries, and we need to make sure that human rights is there, and the international behaviour of countries that we have trade deals with is also raised, and that includes Turkey, because I think that you can't just turn a blind eye to somebody who's breaching international law. That clearly isn't acceptable, and that needs to be highlighted. So those are the sort of things that I'll be raising in Parliament. The High Commissioner is absolutely right when he said peace is not the absence of war, and just because there isn't any violence in Cyprus at the moment, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be seeking a solution, and that solution has to be based on the international principles of respect for human rights, respect for international law, and a free and independent Cyprus. Those have to be the foundations of any sort of solution. We heard from Mr. Fodil about the heartbreaking situation of people that have been unable to recover the remains of their long lost family members. And if Turkey is serious about showing goodwill, they would actually cooperate with helping sort of find some of these missing remains of people, so that at least their loved ones can have some peace. So I will continue the fight. I will speak up for Cyprus as I have done, as will my colleagues, and we will bring it to the attention of the Foreign Secretary. But we need to have a coordinated international effort to do this, and we need to get the whole community involved. So once again, I want to thank Lobby for all their hard work. We're working together, we're on your side, and we'll make sure that we raise the issue and bring it to the fore as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bambos. I know you also have to leave very, very swiftly. Again, I do agree with you that we need to put a bit more pressure on our government here. And you know, over the period of the pandemic, and obviously because of the pandemic, there has been very little access to Parliament and so forth. But I think now's the time, and I would look towards yourself and other members of Parliament, overall political parties, to gather together and to work together. I think that's important. And I saw in the chat with Matthew has suggested that he would like to work with you, and put a debate in the House. So I think that's a very positive way forward. Thank you very much, Bambos. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to call a very good friend, Jim Gariandis from Canada. Jim goes back quite a long time with Lobby for Cyprus, and we've traveled to Cyprus together, to Paris, to the United Nations, which was, what was it? The United Nations, one of
UNHCR.
UNHCR, that's correct. But what I do remember is that Jim and I nearly got arrested. Jim and I walked through Nicosia to the occupied, and we were summoned to go into this this office, and we were basically asked, well, can we have your passports? Can we have your ID? Can you sign this document? And I said to them, well, why do you want my passport? I mean, I'm Greek. I'm a citizen of the Republic of Cyprus. I'm just going to my village down the road. Oh, no, you can't do that. And Jim said, well, I'm a diplomat as well. I can walk through and so forth. And they denied and denied. And it's actually reached the stage where the UN had to come in to ask us to say politely, please, can you both leave? Otherwise, they're going to arrest you and put you in jail. So Jim and I looked at each other and said, well, what should we do? Shall we just cause a scene, or shall we just go back? And anyway, we made our point. And it was sad. And Jim, it was good for Jim to actually see that and take those messages back to Canada as well. Jim, I'll leave you to introduce Nikki as well, and look forward to hearing from you both.
Theo, I want to thank you for those kind words. I've been working with you guys since 1999. I have retired the last year, and although not as active as I used to be, I am still at your side and I still see the good work that you do. But, you know, we talk about Turkey. Let's call a spade a spade. They are not a country to be dealt with. They're a country that's aggressive. They're a country that want to get back to what they had. Erdogan is nothing else but a thug. He wants to become the Sultan, or the new Sultan of Turkey. He wants to create a new Ottoman Empire. We've seen what they've done. They helped their brethren, the Azeris, and they aggressively took parts of Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh. They still have people that fought in that war just about a year ago in jails, and people are missing. They rewrite history to what they want to do, and they aggressively take parts around their country. I mean, what have they done? They threatened Greece, they threatened Bulgaria, they certainly invaded part of Syria, they've helped Azeris invade Azerbaijan, the Artsakh, and they will not leave Cyprus. I mean, in Cyprus, they got 40,000 occupied military personnel. I mean, in Afghanistan, we have 40,000 military personnel to guard against the Taliban and the aggressors. And now, why are they there? Who's the aggressor, and who are they protecting? I mean, the only thing that they want to do is probably try step by step to take over the whole island. But it's with people like Lobby for Cyprus that they won't. I mean, look at history, look at their record, and you be the judge. And unfortunately, it's because where they're located geopolitically, that the great powers, be it Britain, the US, Russia, China, are not willing to take Turkey head on, because they control Bosporus Straits, and that's the key to where you get into the Black Sea. So unfortunately, geography has blessed Turkey, but fortunately, for them, they can do whatever they want, and they get away with murder time and time again. They get away with murder that we can't find our loved ones, the 1,600 plus that are missing. They get away with murder, what they just did recently. They get away with murder every single time. And unless there's somebody that gets elected in one of those respective countries, or one of the respective countries grows strength. I don't want to use another word because I'm known for using colorful words. To do something, nothing will be done. Well, I am retired. However, I do take pleasure of wanting to introduce Nikki Ashton. Nikki and I have traveled to Cyprus together. I think that we were there 2012 or 2013. Nikki, although her and I are not of the same political stripe, we are kindred spirits. We're both of Greek descent. Nikki was born in Thompson, Manitoba. She's the daughter of Chariklia Dimitrakopoulou and the daughter of a former Manitoba provincial state legislature cabinet minister, Steve Ashton. Her father actually is English born. Nikki has an illustrious career. She was first elected in 2008. Before that, in 2004, she was a coordinator and a promoter of volunteering in 2004 Summer Olympics in Athens. Nikki ran for the leadership of the New Democratic Party twice. Nikki has two children, Leonidas and Stefanos, if I'm not mistaken. And she is a good friend of mine. And I hope that with me going into the sunset of the political life, that you guys will pick up and work with Nikki. And with that, I know that she and I might not see political in the political sphere in the same part of Canada, but when it comes to Greece and when it comes to Cyprus, we're there to fight the wars together. Nikki, it's over to you, and thank you to the lobby and to everybody that is there. And certainly it was nice to see His Excellency the Ambassador again, that we have done some work in Northern America. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you for your words, which are truly an honor. We miss you deeply in the political sphere, but so pleased to be able to continue to work with you when it comes to Cyprus and Greece. And I'm so thrilled to be joining everybody tonight. Well, this evening for you, this afternoon for us, in support of Cyprus. I want to begin by saying, as Jim pointed out, I am proud to be to have roots in Greece. Η μητέρα μου είναι Ελληνίδα και ο πατέρας μου είναι μεγάλος φιλέλληνας, and he's been very involved in the struggle for Cyprus as well, as many, including Jim, knows too. So it is important for me to be here as a Canadian, as a member of Parliament, as a Greek Canadian, and as somebody who believes in respect for human rights and for justice, and for to play a role in this struggle as well. I also do want to point out that I have family in Cyprus. Partly came from Greece and cousins now in Cyprus. So on a personal level, I've had the pleasure of visiting, spending time, and finding ways to connect in speaking out for Cyprus, having been there and seen the reality as well. So σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. This week marks the 47th anniversary of the first invasion of Cyprus by Turkey. I say first invasion because it is important to remember that after the attempted coup against President Makarios by the military junta, the junta collapsed and the Turks invaded Cyprus for a second time in August. They went from occupying 3% of the island to 38%. We must be clear, this was an invasion and occupation. Since 1974, Turkey has stationed tens of thousands of troops in the occupied area. Not only has it denied the right to return of Greek Cypriots to the occupied area, it has brought in more than 120,000 settlers. This is ethnic cleansing. This is a violation of human rights. And let's be clear that this violates numerous United Nations resolutions and fundamental tenets of international law. We must also be clear that this didn't just happen. This is a legacy of colonialism, of the Ottoman Empire and the British Empire, of decades before the independence, of the repression of those seeking self-determination for Cyprus. If there has been any doubt about what is happening in Cyprus, one only has to look at the events of the last few days. Provocation by Erdogan, the continued move to open Varosha in violation of United Nations resolutions. The illegal entity occupying northern Cyprus that is only recognized by Turkey. Fundamentally, the statements by Erdogan and others rejecting any peace settlements based on a single united Cyprus. It is important to note that many Turkish Cypriots do not share this view. Many progressive Turkish Cypriots refused to be part of this provocation. Cypriots want to be united. They want the same human rights that other European and other world citizens have and deserve. But let's also be clear that what is happening in Cyprus now is a continuing part of the agenda of Erdogan and his Turkish government that is a growing threat to human rights of many of its own citizens and the peace and stability of the entire region. Let's look at what has been happening. The targeting and purging of many people following the attempted coup 5 years ago that had nothing to do with the coup, the repression of the press, the targeting of opposition parties and politicians, the continuing oppression of Kurds, the move to take Turkey out of the Istanbul Convention on the Rights of Women, the denial of the Armenian and Pontian genocides, the move to use Hagia Sophia for his religious agenda, and the threats to overturn the Treaty of Lausanne that established the current borders between Turkey and Greece, the attacks on the territorial waters and integrity of Greece. Yes, many of these actions have been criticized by international organizations, by the European Union, by individual countries. But where are the consequences? This week marks the 47th anniversary of the first invasion of Cyprus by Turkey. Pardon me. The reality is that all too often, European countries have been two-faced, criticizing violations of international law and human rights, but continuing to pursue their own national interests, including selling arms to Turkey. I am concerned that my own country, Canada, which has a history of being part of building peace inside Cyprus, as peacekeepers at the time of the invasion, has said little or nothing about what is happening. 47 years is a long time. But let's not forget, this is the 200th anniversary of Greek independence. The vision of freedom from Ottoman repression, from slavery, came true after more than 400 years together, that Cypriots of all backgrounds deserve the right to come together to build a better future. As I mentioned, I've been to Cyprus. I have been to the Green Line, first with my family in Cyprus. But my vision and our vision is not strictly based on that connection. I've had the opportunity to visit and study in Turkey. There are many people in Turkey and occupied Cyprus that reject the regressive agenda that has oppressed the people of Cyprus for so long. There is a model I draw on my roots in Greece, in Thraiki. There's a model I draw on my own roots in Greece, in Thraiki, where for more than 100 years, the Muslim population has worked and lived side by side the Greek majority population as part of Greece, where religious rights and educational rights are respected. In fact, my papu was a teacher of Greek in a Turkish school. So today we need to send a clear message. We are with the people of Cyprus. We condemn the provocation of recent days. We have not forgotten the invasion and the occupation of Cyprus. Most importantly, we will not stop until Cyprus is reunited, when the Green Line is no more and the people of Cyprus can live in peace and prosperity, side by side, setting an example for the world for peace and reconciliation. We must make clear that Turkey's actions are unacceptable and that there will be consequences. We need to be building a movement that puts forward this vision. We must recognize that people can come together, that Cypriots of all backgrounds deserve the right to come together to build a better future. So today, we need to send that clear message. We stand together with the people of Cyprus. We condemn the provocations, and we will not stop, setting that example for the world to follow. Σας ευχαριστώ. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure to have you on board. I'm sure that we'll need to get our messages through to the Canadian Parliament. I'm sure that you'll assist us to put forward certain debates as well as our colleagues, your colleagues here in the House of Parliament will do as well. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jim, for introducing Nikki to us. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Theo, you got a new champion. I'm retired. Nikki should step in now and fight and continue that fight in North America for you guys. Pleasure having worked with you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Theo. And I am absolutely here. Σας ευχαριστώ.
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you.
Right, we'll now move on to actually the speakers. I hope that so far, from what I've seen in the question and answers, and people are finding it very, very interesting. And the questions are very, very, very decisive. So I'm sure Theodora will bring them up later on. But I'd like to now introduce to you Professor of Anthropology and History, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Huddersfield in the United Kingdom, Professor Tim Boson. Tim and I go back quite a few years in the education sector, having traveled afar together. Tim, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Theo. And could I also repeat my thanks, as other speakers have, to the Lobby for Cyprus. I feel very privileged, actually, to be allowed to address this very distinguished group tonight. And already a lot has been said, which is relevant to what I want to say. I'm going to start with a story. And it's a story that goes back to 1994. In 1994, I organized a conference, which was called 20 Years of the Invasion of Cyprus. Incidentally, I immediately received a very hostile letter from UK MP, Andrew Folds, saying how dare I talk about an invasion, and I'm obviously not a historian who understood what had happened. But my point of the story is not about that. At the conference, one of the speakers I had invited was Field Marshal Michael Carver, who was Chief of Staff at the time of the Turkish invasion in 1974. Now, at the end of the conference, there was a question and answer session, and I was asked about the future of Cyprus. And I gave a very optimistic synopsis in the sense that I felt the two communities could come together. They could create an understanding, just as Nikki's just been talking about how other communities can live together. Now, I gave this answer, and immediately Field Marshal Michael Carver came in, and he said, I'm sorry, Tim Boson, I know he's a Grecophile, and I know that he's studied classics and Byzantine history, and he's written a couple of books, one about Cyprus. I know he's done all these things, but he doesn't actually understand the situation. The situation is that Turkey is in control. It's nothing to do with the Cypriots. And Turkey will not give up Cyprus, this great strategic goal that they have achieved, will not give this up easily. And he actually then wanted to predict, my view will be that Cyprus, eventually the north of Cyprus, will be annexed by Turkey. Well, this was like a cold shower to me at the time, but it made me realize that the main power here that was blocking all negotiations, all hopes for the future, was actually Turkey. And why? Well, of course, and other speakers have already explained how strategically important Cyprus is. So partly is about the strategy, but what else is behind that? And this is where my sort of bit of anthropology started coming in, my understanding what's going on here. And the problem, of course, lies in the fact that Turkey has never really been a democracy. It's never had a civil culture that understands how to relate to the wishes and the demands of people. It is still stuck in the old political culture of the Sultanate, but also of course, Mustafa Kemal, who continued that. He was an authoritarian ruler, a benign one in many ways, for Turkey and a westernizing one, but nevertheless, his word counted. What we've got now in Turkey is exactly the same thing. And in fact, it's even worse. We know, and you will know this better than me, that of course, where, for example, the Loisedu case that went to the European Court of Human Rights recognized that the northern government, the so-called TRNC government of Cyprus, is merely a puppet state of Turkey. So it's Turkey one has to deal with to understand how there can be a settlement in Turkey. And because Turkey is now, and I fear have moved to what is classified by the Economist Intelligence Unit as an authoritarian state, there are all sorts of violations. And you know what the violations are that go on with an authoritarian state. I can read out those violations. Here they are. Democratic freedom. We know freedom of speech, freedom from discrimination, freedom from torture, freedom of movement, freedom of education, freedom on the rights of displaced persons, and the rights of property. All of those have been violated by the agent of Turkey. What is the solution here? Well, under Erdogan, I cannot be very optimistic. Erdogan has made it quite clear. When he founded the Justice Development Party, the AKP, back in 2001, it was to be conservative. It was to be nationalist. It was to be right-wing and popularist. It was to be illiberal in every way. It was to be economically a nationalist, Eurosceptic, and this new word, it was to be Erdoganism, this new area of Erdoganism. And we see what has happened with Erdogan. He is now interfering in Libya. He's interfering in Syria. He interfered, as our Canadian speakers earlier said, in this dispute between the Azeris and the Armenians. He believes he is going to, and he's actually gone on press to say this, he is going to revive the Ottoman Empire. He believes that he can be the great power in the Middle East, and that this will solidify Turkey's rights. He sees them as previous rights. Of course, he's shifted away from NATO and from America, which was always, with regard to Cyprus, the elephant in the room. He's moved away from there. He courts now with Putin's Russia. And in fact, one of the Guardian journalists, Tisdale, described him as no better than Putin in the way that he acts. Now, what has given Erdogan this opportunity and power? Well, again, using anthropology, I would say this is a common problem that has hit the world. And the common problem is popularism. And popularism allows nationalism to subvert democratic rights again and again. So what drives this? What is driving popularism? In a world where you would think, because of the internet, because of the ease of communication, because of the ease of travel, what you would find was actually more understanding of other cultures, and you would find better relationships and more liberalism. But what is actually happening with populism is the reverse. And of course, we've had, fortunately overturned, but recently, of course, we've had popularism in America under Donald Trump. And how could someone like Donald Trump come to power? What is going on, say, in France with Marine Le Pen? What has happened in Northern Italy? What is happening in Hungary with Orban? What is happening now in Poland, who is flouting the laws of the European Union? What is going on? Well, I've looked at this in some detail, and what I see emerging is this: what has happened with, we could call the global village, with the ease of communication, with the way we've developed the world, is actually a large group of people are being left behind. The uneducated, the unskilled, the people who've lost their traditional jobs, the people who have lost their identity. And populism allows them then to jump on the national bandwagon. These so-called democracies, and Turkey is one of them, is a situation where there is an election where they think they're entitled, therefore, to say we are democratic. But actually, the bullying, the coercion, the fraud means that it's you vote and I win. Erdogan says you vote and Erdogan wins. And we've seen this happening again. And it's that deprived group who, in a sense, are seduced into this nationalism, this chauvinism, as it really is, which is shaking the world at the moment. And it's very, very dangerous. Now, this is, you might say, quite pessimistic with regard to Cyprus. Erdogan does not want any settlement. He will argue the two-state, and we know the European Union has rejected it, and other statesmen across the world are rejecting it. He doesn't want a settlement in the way that Putin moved into the Ukraine. This is what Erdogan thinks he can get away with. He now thinks he's a dynamic Middle Eastern power who can flout international law, and who, and this has already been stated by the speakers, who is standing up to him, who is actually stopping him. We need to galvanize more world opinion to bring some sanctions to stop this dangerous Turkish expansion and this incredible dictatorship that is now emerging. How many journalists are in prison in Turkey? According to Amnesty, the last figure, over 120. How many administrators are in jail? How many people who opposed him are in jail? Probably 40 to 50,000. The figures are not even clear. He is acting as a dictator and he needs to be called out as a dictator. In my own area, in academia, those liberal and elected presidents of the universities have all been displaced by Erdoganese people. So he's moving this country away from democracy, and this bodes very badly for what will happen in Northern Cyprus. And as previous speakers have intimated, he is moving slowly, inch by inch, testing out how far he can go. Back in 1994, Michael Carver said to me, the Turkish generals are running the country and they will not allow Cyprus to be given up. Erdogan, of course, got rid of many of his generals, but he still controls the military, and the military will not give up Cyprus. What are 40 to 50,000 troops doing in Cyprus? They're all part of Erdogan's now bid to control the Middle East. He's moved into areas where he thinks he can be the main power in the Middle East. His great rival, of course, will in the end be Iran, and maybe that will end some self-destruction. But the real issue is how we get political culture of democracy to work within Turkey. And if we can't do that, then we're not going to be able to solve the Cyprus problem. I'm sorry to be pessimistic in this way, but I think we do need, as other speakers have called, we do need urgent action by the world community to put pressure on Turkey, and we need someone to be able to challenge Erdogan's erosion of any democratic rights, civil rights that exist either in Northern Cyprus or in Turkey itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you. I'm not going to make my comments because I'm going to pass the baton to Vasilis Fouskas, Professor Vasilis Fouskas. He's a professor of international politics and economics at the University of East London here in the United Kingdom. Vasilis, would you like to intervene?
Sure. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Thank you so much, because I cannot hear you very well. Obviously, it's my old laptop here, which is operating from Banja Luka in Bosnia at the moment. First of all, thank you very much, Theo, for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be in such a company today. I've seen so many people I met, obviously in the past, including Tim, actually, whom I met through the late Peter Gowan in Holloway Road back in back in the mid-90s, actually straight after the conference he mentioned. I mean, I was teaching Peter Gowan's course and he said, well, I have somebody to to introduce to you who is interested in Cyprus issue. Anyway, just to a starter, I remember the very first meeting I had with the first coordinator of the Lobby for Cyprus and my dear friend and comrade, Kyriakos Christodoulou, right? We met something like 25 years ago in North London somewhere, first time, and we start talking about Cyprus. And he turns to me at some point and say, you know nothing about Cyprus. I say, oh, really? I mean, I thought I know something. And he said to me, he defined the Cyprus issue in two simple sentences, which they really impressed me. And since then, I start, digging into material, into history with help of friends and so on to find out more and more and more. And more I read about Cyprus, more I come back to his definition of the Cyprus issue. He gave me two definitions of the Cyprus issue. The first one was that which included the period 1960-1974. He said the Cyprus issue those years were that of an ethnic majority not being able to rule over an ethnic minority, not being allowed to rule over democratically over an ethnic minority. I thought this is very, very good, a very precious remark, defining the Cyprus issue from 1960 to 1974. And then I said, what's happening after 1974? Well, it's very well known. It's a matter of illegal invasion and occupation. And he stopped there. And I think these 2 points, 1960, 1974, the first period, as the Cyprus issue, how it was defined, and then from 1974 to the present day, it's also very important because it connects what kind of solution we aim at the Cyprus issue. Because if we define the Cyprus issue as a matter of illegal invasion and occupation, and if this is the real cause of the conflict, then a conflict is solved when the cause of the conflict is removed. It's as simple as that. And the primary cause of the conflict in Cyprus is the Turkish military invasion. That is where the effort of international community, of the Greek state, of the European Union, of NATO powers should be concentrated on the issue of Turkish military invasion. Well, it comes now. This is a very difficult problem to solve, believe it or not. And I come now to build on some points made by Tim, which I find very valuable. And very valid. But there is an aspect that hasn't been covered somehow, and this is what lies beneath the power of Erdogan. What is it that makes him so powerful? What is it that makes him so control of the state? I mean, he's in charge of the former Kemalist state. And the issue what I want to put here in front of everybody is whether there is a continuity rather than discontinuity between the Kemalist regime and the Erdogan's regime. My personal research on that issue is that there is very much a continuity. And we need to look on that. We have to have, in my view, and this I come back to Peter Gowan, Tim, who taught me how to be, if need be, a political economist. So I believe that we need to have a political economy approach to understand the Erdogan phenomenon. Who brought which classes, social classes, which type of new bourgeoisie brought him to power, and what happens with the secular bourgeoisie of Turkey? Who are those people? And eventually, once we pause and sort out this question, will current Turkish policy in Cyprus and, in fact, the Turkish neo-Ottoman policy outlive Erdogan? I personally believe that it will outlive Erdogan. Even if Erdogan dies tomorrow, Turkish politics will become even more aggressive. And I want just to make a very short point, but I believe comprehensive, and I will stop. The point I'm making here is that, and the position I take on Turkey is that it is what we call now. I came to call Turkey as a sub-imperial power, sub-imperialist power. is not an imperial state like the United States, but it's definitely has a capacity which stems from its position in capital, in globalization networks, and in supply chain networks, within global capital, to have aspirations of a new peripheral hegemon, to revive its hegemony in the Balkans, in Eastern Mediterranean, Northeastern Africa, and the Middle East and Central Asia. Central Asia, obviously, yes, Erdogan is in Afghanistan, is in charge of the airport in Afghanistan. And you know what? He doesn't care about Taliban because he placates the Taliban. He has no issue with Taliban. They're of the same breed. They don't, you know. So behind that, the driving force is Turkish capital in alliance with other types of capital that are not necessarily Turkish. It can be German, it can be even American, it can be British, it can be French. So it's a complicated issue to remove Turkish troops from Cyprus because there are many capitalist interests interconnected with Turkey. That's why Turkey is so powerful. It's very powerful, not because it's Turkey, but because global capital makes Turkey very powerful in a synergy with Turkey's domestic capital. And when I've done some research on the Turkish syndicates, there are two major Turkish syndicates, Turkish Businessmen Association, let's put it this way, right? One is called the TUSİAD, and the other one is MUSİAD. I can put it in the chat if you know. So TUSİAD and MUSİAD. TUSİAD includes enterprises like the Koç Corporation, Sabancı Corporation, Anadolu. These are conglomerates. I give you an example. Koç has bought Grundig in Germany. So 30% of electronic market in Germany is run by Koç, who has also a university, as Theo can confirm, in Istanbul, one of the most prestigious universities in Turkey and even globally. Koç. Sabancı also has a university. Now, MUSİAD is where the neo-Islamic bourgeoisie is concentrated, which supports Erdogan. So Erdogan is caught up between a secular global bourgeoisie with global supply network, which is aggregated around TUSİAD, and then there is MUSİAD, which is the neo-Islamic bourgeoisie that has mostly a domestic base. So one of Erdogan's ways of solving this domestic conflict, which sometimes is concentrated, for example, on the interest rates, on the pressures on the bank of the Central Bank of Turkey, and so on. I can come to that in detail if I'm asked questions. I can talk about that, but I don't want to focus talk on the interest rates or the Central Bank of Turkey. Well, anytime there is a lot of pressure on Erdogan makes an outward moves to satisfy both factions of big capital of Turkey. It can go to Libya, massive constructions company, they are in Libya, as there will be in Famagusta. And Tim, you know what? I think Turkey has annexed Northern Cyprus. I mean, all my Turkish friends oppose Erdogan and they fight against Erdogan and against Turkish capitalism. They are calling Northern Cyprus as an annexed part of Cyprus, illegally occupied, a military invasion and occupation North Cyprus. So therefore, to come to the conclusion, it is a pessimistic conclusion, but at the same time, it's very realistic. I am saying that there is a massive capital concentration in Turkey. This capital concentration, which goes hand in hand with a massive population increase, whereas all the population of Europe, including Greece's own, is decreasing. Turkey is increasing population. By 2050, Turkey will have 1 million people, or 100 million people. This is a lot for, this is, so therefore has an extrovert attitude, Turkey, in the Balkans, in the Middle East, and so on. In that, if you ask me how this can be deterred, I have an answer, but I will reserve that answer for the question and answer session. To conclude, I want to point out that Turkey does what it does, not because of Erdogan, not just because of this, but because of the dynamics, of the internal dynamics of the capital, which is globalized and has an extrovert tendency. So that means that even after the death of Erdogan, this tendency will continue unless something else happens. Now, what is going to happen? I don't know, but I have a policy, an idea of deterrence, and this can be discussed later on. Thank you so much. I hope I haven't abused my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vasily. Thank you very much. Theodora, shall we move on?
Of course. Thank you very much, Vasily, for that. And actually, one of the questions that did come up from Eleni was, why are we talking about Erdogan? We should be talking about Turkey more generally, because, of course, the invasion happened before Erdogan. The whole discussion on bizonal bicommunal federation was before Erdogan, but clearly Erdogan is our current problem. So on that note, I will be inviting Dr. Glergos Kyriakidis. He is assistant professor of law at UCLan in Cyprus. Before that, he was in the UK. He is a long-standing supporter of Lobby for Cyprus, for which we thank him for. And he always brings clear and always researched logic to our discussions. Glergos, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that warm and generous introduction. I want to begin by thanking Lobby for Cyprus for inviting me to speak this evening. I also want to express my thanks to each and every one of the speakers who have already spoken or will speak this evening. I'd like to extend special thanks to Alexia Vassiliou and George Evianiou for everything that they've done over the years. It's important to acknowledge that those who operate in the twin fields of music and the theatre have played a really important role in exposing the injustice that has befallen Cyprus in their own distinctive ways. The academics and the lawyers and the journalists play a big role too, but I think it's important in an event like this for me as an academic to make that observation. I also have to make a declaration of interest at the outset. I have roots in various parts of Cyprus, including the villages of Bedra and Lisi, both of which were ethnically cleansed after being occupied by Turkey in 1974. Now, at this point, I'm going to see if I can share the screen now, because I've prepared a few images to show you. Now, it's telling me the host has disabled the screening. Could I be given access to the screen sharing facility, please? And then I'll press on.
Yes, 1 moment, and I will do that. Where are you? Just remove the spotlight, and I will. Doesn't seem to let me enable. So shall I share your slides?
Okay.
Okay.
So if you go to the first slide, it's just my introductory one. Yeah.
Okay, I should be sharing.
Yes. So what I'm going to try and do is address a straightforward question. Have Ottomanism and the rule of force triumphed over democracy and the rule of law? It's a very simple question. And it's an important question because the Cyprus problem, so-called, is not only a problem of invasion and occupation, as so many people quite rightly say. It's way beyond a problem of invasion and occupation. It's to do with whether or not the two cardinal legal and ethical principles of Europe and the wider democratic world will survive at the very edge of Europe, at its southeast corner, at the place where democracy as an idea has come into collision with Ottomanism and its variants over the years, which might include neo-Ottomanism, or Erdoganism. And with that thought, could you please turn to the third slide, John the second. Let's remind ourselves what democracy is. It was beautifully put by a politician I didn't always agree with, President Barack Obama, during his visit to Greece on the 16th of November, that was 2016, we're indebted to Greece for the most precious of gifts, the truth, the understanding that as individuals of free will, we have the right and the capacity to govern ourselves. For it was here 25 centuries ago in the rocky hills of this city that a new idea emerged. Demokratia, grados, the power, the right to rule, comes from demos, the Greek word for the people. The notion that we are citizens, not servants, but stewards of our society. And with that comes the concept of citizenship, that we have both rights and responsibilities. That brings us to the belief in equality before the law, not just for a few, but for the many, not just for the majority, but also for the minority. These are all concepts that grew out of this rocky soil in Greece. You go to the next slide, please. That is democracy. Democracy rests on the idea of the people in the singular, together with various enlightened principles such as human dignity, equality before the law, and of course the rule of law. Ottomanism has a completely different mindset and approach. Instead of focusing on the people at the bottom, it focuses on the rulers at the top, the Sultan, and in the modern variant of Ottomanism, the president. The Oxford English Dictionary defines Ottomanism as the culture of the Ottoman Turks, who ruled initially in northern Anatolia from the end of the 19th century until the collapse of the Ottoman Empire shortly after the First World War. The Oxford English Dictionary also reminds us that Ottomanism is a civilization. It also involves the promotion of the ideas of Ottomanism as a political program. It's of course wrapped up with religion, and that's why under an Ottoman society, there is no such thing as secularism, the separation of religion from the political sphere. Please move on to the next slide. We hear this phrase that the Cyprus problem is one of invasion and occupation. I agree, but I emphasize it's much deeper than that. The politicians try to avoid discussing this issue because it's so thorny and delicate, but I'm going to address it because I'm not a politician. Ottomanism rests on the segregationist notion of two millets, two religious communities in the plural, formed of Muslims and non-Muslims respectively. That's because of the Quranic base of Ottomanism, and it's because of the non-secular nature of Ottomanism that brings religion very much to the forefront of politics. The problem is that Ottomanism is based on this concept of the millet. And again, if one just opens the Oxford English Dictionary, one sees what's wrong with the concept of the millet. It's defined in the Oxford English Dictionary as a concept in the Ottoman Empire. Millet was a division of the population according to religious or ethnic affiliation. A millet is a religious community or ethnic group having some degree of internal autonomy, and that's especially applicable to a non-Muslim community. What we have here is the first major challenge that democracy has at its southeast edge. Is democracy going to survive in Southeast Europe based around the concept of the people and citizens of various ethnic or religious backgrounds forming part of the people, each with an equal opportunity to rise to the top of politics or society or business or any other sphere of activity? Or is Ottomanism going to prevail with this idea of two separate religious communities? That's the question that is confronting Southeast Europe, particularly in the Republic of Cyprus. It's not the only issue because we have the rule of law to discuss a little bit later on, but that's one of the key issues. Please go to the next slide. Let's not beat about the bush. The so-called Cyprus problem flows from the demographic realities as captured by the official census carried out by the British authorities in the then Crown Colony of Cyprus in 1946. 78.2% of the population identified itself as Greek Orthodox, 17.5% identified itself as Muslim Turkish, and 4.3% identified itself as adhering to other religions. They're not my labels, they were the labels used by the British colonial authorities in 1946. You can see back then that this Ottoman idea of associating individual people with a religion was prevalent in the Ottoman culture that the British had inherited and preserved. And this, I regret to say, is the Ottoman culture that was enshrined in the 1960 Constitution, and it's continuing to this day. Can you please move on? There it is, the 1960 Constitution. It cemented the millet system by enshrining this concept of the two communities, the Greek community and the Turkish community. But worst of all, in addition to segregating, it had imposed direct or indirect forms of discrimination on the basis of ethnicity or religion. So under the 1960 Constitution, in order to become president, you had to be Greek. And in order to be vice president, you had to be Turk. Well, that imposed discrimination and therefore inequality on every citizen of the Republic of Cyprus of Turkish background who was prohibited by law from ever serving as president, unless they switched from being Turkish to Greek. This is completely at odds with the democratic idea of the people and non-discrimination. So Article 1 of the Constitution of the Republic enshrined segregation. The concept of the people, the phrase of the people, was absent from the Constitution imposed in 1960. So was indeed the very words democracy and the related word democratic. So what was established in 1960 as a result of Turkey's relationship with the United Kingdom and Greece, both of whom went along with the Turkish idea, was what amounted to an Ottoman or neo-Ottoman sovereign state with severely curtailed sovereignty. The next slide, please. And here we have in Article 2 of the Constitution, the cementing of the segregation and the creation, or rather the recreation in the post-1960 epoch of the Ottoman millet system. The two communities, to use the phrase in the Constitution, consist of the Greek community that is defined with reference to citizens who are of Greek origin and whose mother tongue is Greek, or who share the Greek cultural traditions, or who are members of the Greek Orthodox Church. They're on the one hand. And on the other hand, the Turkish community, which is defined as citizens of the Republic who are of Turkish origin and whose mother tongue is Turkish, or who share the Turkish cultural traditions, or who are Muslims. So the Turkish community is essentially the Muslim community, even though it was given the label the Turkish community. And what if you were neither ethnically Greek or ethnically Turkish? You're obliged to opt into one of the two communities. And if you're a married woman, irrespective of your ethnic or religious background, you're automatically shoved into the community that your husband belongs to, because the 1960 Constitution, as originally drafted, rests on the assumption that a married woman is an extension of her husband. That's in Article 2.7 of the Constitution. This isn't democracy. This is Ottomanism. Next slide, please. Now, I'm very conscious of the time and I want to move on to the rule of law. The problem that we had after 1960 was that we had a communalist society. We should have known, or our forefathers should have known, that if you have a constitution that is based upon ethnic division, you're going to produce ethnic conflict. There's a strong likelihood of ethnic conflict, and that's exactly what went wrong. Instead of the Constitution acting as a unifying factor, it acted as a source of friction. And for various reasons I'm not going to go into now, the Constitution de facto collapsed by 1963, or by the end of 1963, partly as a result of Turkish interference, but there were other factors associated with the innate problems of Ottomanism as built into the constitution. Now, what the Turks, when I say the Turks, the so-called leadership of the Turkish community in the Republic, who were puppets of Ankara, and what Ankara were doing in the 60s, was they started laying the ground for what led to the 1974 Turkish invasions of the Republic of Cyprus. So let me just highlight for you three of the pillars of pre-1974 Turkish strategy. This is so important to understand, A, to see how the rule of law was shredded in the Republic of Cyprus in 1974, but B, to show you how the so-called international community has capitulated to the demands of Turkey as laid down in this pre-1964 period. My source, I could have chosen several. My source is the report of the UN mediator, Dr. Gallo Plaza, to the UN Secretary General, dated 26th of March 1965, a full 9 years or so before Turkey invaded. The first pillar of Turkish pre-1974 strategy is the preservation of bicommunal segregation. Gallo Plaza wrote, "The Turkish view maintained that the whole structure of the Republic rested on the existence of two communities and not of a majority and a minority." He wrote that in the light of representations he'd received from the Turkish leadership in the Republic of Cyprus and from Ankara. The next slide, please. The second pillar of pre-1974 strategy was already started to be built in the 1950s, hence Dr. Fazıl Küçük's infamous book, The Cyprus Question, A Permanent Solution, which called for partition. That was published in 1957. By 1965, when Gallo Plaza reported, the aim of the Turkish leadership was to separate the two communities physically by concentrating members of their community, that's to say the Turkish community, in one or more large areas and creating a new and political administrative structure on this basis. They also called for a geographical basis for the state of affairs created by the Zurich and London Agreements of 1959. And in short, they wished to be physically separated from the Greek community. This is old-fashioned apartheid with a geographical basis. But what makes it even worse than apartheid was that the Turks were not only content with having two separate communities and having two separate zones. They wanted to have a compulsory exchange of population. And the next slide makes this point even more graphically. If you can please turn to it. So from 1965, the Turkish leadership already had in mind a dividing line from the northwest on the island down to Nicosia and then down to Famagusta. So it was a variation of the 1957 map that Fazıl Küçük, the then Turkish leader, was putting forward. But the idea of carving up Cyprus into a northern Turkish populated zone and a southern Greek populated zone was already in place by the time Gallo Plaza reported in 1965. The next slide, please. And the third pillar, there are several, but I'll just stick to three. The third pillar of pre-1974 Turkish strategy was, and I'm quoting here from Gallo Plaza, a federal system within which there would exist autonomous Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriot states, the conditions for whose existence would be created by the geographical separation which they insistently demand of the two communities. Now, Gallo Plaza commented here, to refer to it simply as federation is to oversimplify the matter. What is involved is not merely to establish a federal form of government, but also to secure the geographical separation of the two communities. I mean, it was a fake form of federation, nothing to do with democracy, because what the Turks were calling for in 1965 was for the forcible uprooting of Christians and Greeks and tossed into one zone, and the forcible uprooting of Turks and Muslims and tossed into a different zone. That nothing to do with democracy, which rests on human dignity, non-discrimination, and the principle of equality before the law. Next slide, please. Gallo Plaza just commented that the Turkish proposal was essentially the same as the proposal put forward by the Turkish Cypriot leadership. Turkey favoured geographical separation of the two communities under a federal system of government. And that was associated with the old idea in Nihatharim from 1956. I'm inching towards the end, but I want to just draw your attention to an outstanding collection of documents published by Routledge in association with the UK government. It's called Foreign and Commonwealth Office Documents on British Policy Overseas. What we find in here is the UK government washing its dirty linen in public, which is what the UK government is very good at doing from time to time, because they believe in transparency up to a point, which is very welcome. But what we find in this collection of documents, and others that I've seen in the National Archives in London, is that Turkish strategy between the two Turkish invasions of the 20th of July 1974 and the 14th of August 1974, Turkish strategy in that period was the same as in the pre-1974 period. They wanted to maintain the two communities. They wanted to create a Turkish zone in the north, and they wanted to have a federal system. And it's laid down for us, for example, in the representation made by the Turkish Foreign Minister in Geneva on the 13th of August. The important and non-negotiable elements of a settlement as far as Turkey were concerned on the 13th of August 1974 were geographical separation and federation within a single state. Those were, to all intents and purposes, the Turkish pillars of pre-1974 policy. And if we can go to the next slide, I'm going to gradually crawl to the end. The UK government, in one of the most extraordinary telephone conversations in the history of international relations, cut a deal with the US government on the 14th of August 1974. That's on the day that the second invasion unfolded. The British Foreign Secretary said, this is according to declassified UK Foreign Office record of the 14th of August, Jim Callaghan, the then Foreign Secretary, said, "In my view, this can now only be resolved by the creation of a zone in which they, the Turks, will have autonomy within a federal republic. You'll have a great exchange of population with the Greeks moving out, and we'll then just let diplomacy take over when we see the opportunity once more to see if we can get a peaceful solution on the island." And Kissinger, the US Secretary of State, responded, "I completely agree with you, Jim." So there we have it. The three pillars of Turkish strategy, the creation or the retention of two communities, the creation of two zones, the creation of a federation, were embraced hook, line, and sinker by the US and UK governments as the second invasion was unfolded. And if we just go to the next slide, we can see what happened in the aftermath. On the 25th, I'm going to finish here, the time is running out. On the 25th of March 1975, the UK embassy in Ankara reported, this was through a diplomat called W.H. Fullerton, who later served as an ambassador elsewhere. So he reported from the British embassy in Ankara. First of all, the Turks have very largely attained all they really need in the island. What they lack is A, the recovery of the Turkish Cypriots still in the south, and B, Greek acquiescence in a weak federal system. It's Greek acceptance of this new situation on the island that they are after first and foremost. So what the Turks wanted after they'd accomplished the de facto occupation of 36% of the territory and 57% of the coastline was to recover the citizens of the Republic of Cyprus of Turkish origin from south of the ceasefire line. They achieved that with the help of the UK government, I regret to say. And what they also wanted was Greek acquiescence in a Greek federal system. And for the last 47 years, the United Nations has capitulated to this Turkish policy. The United States, United Kingdom, European Union, the Commonwealth, successive governments of the Republic of Cyprus, successive governments of Greece, virtually every country around the world has capitulated to Turkey, and it's backfired. And I'll just close with three thoughts. The first is, as we've already heard, Turkey has descended or redescended into authoritarianism. where academics, lawyers, journalists, and others are being arbitrarily detained or unjustly imprisoned for offences in inverted commas that would not be considered offences in real democracy. The second thing that's happened that has backfired spectacularly on the proponents of Turkish strategy is that instead of Turkey behaving like a democracy that belongs to NATO, Turkey is belonging and behaving as an ally of Russia, an ally of Iran, and an ally of other countries that are deemed to be adversaries of the West. And the third thing that's happened, and this is perhaps most chilling of all, and perhaps, Theodora, if you go to the slide with the nuclear power station, I'll finish with that. Oh, yes, next one, please. That's it. Let me just pause here. This is perhaps the two chilling thoughts to close with. The first is that the Turkish government is repeatedly pumping out images through its social media and websites that portray the whole of the island of Cyprus. That is to say, the Republic of Cyprus and the two sovereign base areas of the UK as if they belong to Turkey. I mean, that is frightening in one sense, because Turkey is exhibiting no regard whatsoever for the sovereignty of the Republic of Cyprus, and it's transmitting, I would suggest, a subliminal message that it has ideas. But the other thing that I want to close on, and this is the nuclear slide, please. That was Erdogan in the occupied area yesterday. There we go. This is the most chilling development of all. Turkey has decided to build a nuclear power station 100 or so kilometers to the north of Turkish-occupied Karinya, and that means it's approximately 115, 120 kilometers from Nicosia. That nuclear power station has 4 nuclear reactors under construction. The first one is due to open in 2023. The nuclear power station is being built and financed by Russia. Russia and Turkey have the 2 worst human rights records in Europe, and both countries have stopped short of signing up to a number of treaties to do with nuclear safety and the environment. This is where appeasement has led us to. The construction of a Russian-built nuclear power station 100 or so kilometers to the north of the Republic of Cyprus that threatens the people of Turkey, the people of the Republic of Cyprus, and I would suggest the whole of Europe. Thank you for listening.
Theo, you're on mute.
Thank you, Claire. Theodora, please just conclude with Glárkos. I have the mayor on the phone, so I'd like to just bring him in straight after your summary, yeah? And then we'll call Van to come in straight after.
That's fine, you can go ahead, and I think Glárkos said everything very clearly. There's no need for summing up, other than Laris did point out that
Hello.
in the Q&A that...
Καλησπέρα, κύριε Δήμαρχε. Καλησπέρα. Ναι. Τώρα να σε συνδέσω, δώσου μου 10 δευτερόλεπτα. The mayor will be speaking in Greek. Fanoula, can you unmute and translate, please, for us? Hello, Fanoula.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Θα υπάρχει μετάφραση, αν μπορείτε. Ναι, να προχωρήσουμε. Ναι, είσαστε στον αέρα, κύριε Δήμαρχε. Ναι. Ωραία. Μπορείτε τότε να μας δώσετε το μήνυμα σας σχετικά με τι έχει γίνει τις τελευταίες ημέρες στην Κύπρο, σχετικά με την αμόχωστο, παρακαλώ.
Δυστυχώς, ό,τι περιμέναμε εδώ και 2 χρόνια, μια ιστορία που ξεκίνησε από τις επισκέψεις του Υπουργού Εξωτερικών της Τουρκίας.
Can I stop him and translate, or?
Ναι, πες του να σταματήσει. Ναι.
The mayor says that what we were waiting for 2 years actually materialized.
γίνει τώρα πραγματικότητα.
Now it's a reality.
Φαίνεται ότι αυτό το οποίο έκαναν στην περίκλειστη περιοχή με το να ανακηρύξουν μια μικρή περιοχή από στρατιωτική ζώνη σε αστική περιοχή.
It seems that what they had intention to do to declare a small area for civilians.
Είναι ένα, φαίνεται, πείραμα για να δουν τις αντιδράσεις της διεθνούς κοινότητας.
Is an attempt to see the reaction of the international community.
Και των Ελληνοκυπρίων κατοίκων και ιδιοκτητών της περίκλειστης περιοχής.
And of the Greek Cypriot owners of the fenced area in Famagusta.
Εάν οι αντιδράσεις της διεθνούς κοινότητας των Ηνωμένων Πολιτειών, της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης και των υπολείπων μελών του Συμβουλίου Ασφαλείας,
if the reaction of the international community of the European Union of America,
τότε σίγουρα θα συνεχίσουν αυτόν το οποίο έχουν ξεκινήσει τώρα.
Then it is sure, it is obvious that they will continue what they started now.
Εμείς περιμένουμε από η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, από τις 5 μόνιμο μέλη του Συμβουλίου Ασφαλείας.
We expect from the European Union and the 5 members of the Security Council
να είναι πολύ πιο πιστικές στις πιέσεις τις οποίες
to be more to have stronger pressure on Turkey and to be more meaningful.
Περιμένουμε ένα ψήφισμα από το Συμβούλιο Ασφαλείας.
We are expecting a Security Council resolution.
Και να λέει ποιος παραβιάζει
that will say which party is violating.
Όσον αφορά τους νόμιμους κατοίκους της περίκλειστης περιοχής της Αμμοκόστου.
Ένα λεπτό, Δήμαρχε. As regards the lawful and the owners of the properties of the fenced area,
μεταξύ τους επικρατεί μια απογοήτευση.
Between them there is satisfaction.
Εμείς σαν η ανώτατη αρχή της πόλης,
we as the highest authority of the town, of the city,
συστήνουμε τους Αμμοκοστιανούς να επιδείξουν αυτοσυγκράτηση.
We suggest to them to be to self-control themselves.
Δεν θα ονομάσουμε εμείς κανένα προδότη ή πατριώτη.
We are not going to label anybody as a traitor or a patriot.
Διότι δυστυχώς ο κόσμος της Αμμοκόστου είναι προδομένος εδώ και 47 χρόνια.
Because the people of Famagusta have been, because the people of Famagusta have been, they have been let down since 47 years ago.
Και πόσες φορές έχει χαθεί ευκαιρία για να δοθεί πίσω το περιφραγμένο μέρος του νόμιμους κατοίκους της.
And many times the opportunity has been lost for the return of the fenced area.
Όμως πρέπει να ξέρουμε ότι με το να αποφασίσεις να επιστρέψεις κάτω από κατοχική διοίκηση,
we must know that to return under the authority of the occupational of the regime of occupation,
πρέπει να αναγνωρίσεις την ούτω καλούμενη τουρκοκυπριακή δημοκρατία Βορειάς Κύπρου.
You have to recognize the so-called Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus.
Να να δεχτείς ότι ο τίτλος ιδιοκτησίας της περιουσίας σου θα καταδεθεί στο ούτω καλούμενο τουρκοκυπριακό κτηματολογιό.
So you will have to consent that the title of your property will be deposited under the land registry of the illegal regime.
Και σίγουρα όλα τα έξοδα της αποκατάστασης αυτής της περιουσίας θα είναι με έξοδα του Ελληνοκύπριου ιδιοκτήτη.
And all the expenses that will be needed for all this to happen will be paid by the Greek owner.
Έχοντας όμως το φόβο ότι
κάποια
μέρα το ΕΦΚΑΒ, τα βακούφια θα διεκδικήσουν πιθανόν αυτήν την περιουσία.
So it is you have to be fearful. You have to consent that at the end the FCAF will win over you and will take over your property.
Θα είσαι αναγκασμένος να προσφύγεις σε ένα δικαστήριο το οποίο θα ανήκει στην τουρκοκυπριακή διοίκηση.
So you will be obliged to apply to a court under the Turkish regime that belongs to the authority of the occupation.
Αυτό το κομμάτι που έχουν ανακοινώσει ότι θα ανοίξουν είναι ένα μικρό κομμάτι, το 3,5% της περίκλειστης περιοχής.
The area they have declared that they will open below is a small area in the fenced perimeter, 3.5 miles.
Το 95% των κτηρίων εδώ είναι καταστραμμένα, παχιά κτίρια.
95% of the properties are destroyed.
Είναι στην περιοχή περίπου στην περιοχή Αγίου Νικολάου Αγίας Εκατερίνης. Δεν έχουν καμία σχέση με το Παναγιώτοπο. Και έχουν επαφή με την περιοχή η οποία έχει ήδη επικιστεί εδώ και πολύ καιρό.
Yes.
Άλλο.
Ναι.
Τώρα, το μήνυμα το οποίο δίδουμε στους λαό της Αμοχώστους είναι ότι πρέπει να παραμείνουμε ενωμένοι.
The message we give to the people of Famagusta is to be united, to stay united.
Διότι ο Δήμος Αμοχώστου δεν είναι Δήμος μόνο της περίκλειστης περιοχής, αλλά ολόκληρου του Δήμου Αμοχώστου που περίπου τα 3/4 έχουν επικιστεί εδώ και πάρα πολύ καιρό.
The council of Famagusta is not just for one part, covers the whole of the area of Famagusta.
Αλλά θα κάνουμε ό,τι περνά από το χέρι μας.
We will do whatever.
Ούτε η περίκλειστη περιοχή.
We will do whatever we can for the whole area.
Τέλος, να κλείσω να χαιρετήσω όλους τους συμπατριώτες στην Μεγάλη Βρετανία.
I salute all our compatriots in Great Britain.
Ότι να κάνουν ό,τι μπορούν να επηρεάσουν τους φίλους της Κύπρου στο Βρετανικό Κοινοβούλιο.
To do whatever they can to influence the friends of Cyprus in the British Parliament.
Διότι είναι ένα ξεκάθαρο θέμα παραβίασης των ψηφισμάτων του Συμβουλίου Ασφαλείας των Ηνωμένων Εθνών.
Because this is a clear-cut violation of the Security Council resolution.
Σας ευχαριστώ.
Thank you very much.
Ευχαριστώ κύριε Δημάρχε. Βεβαίως, ναι, το καλύψατε. Can you continue while I speak to the mayor, please?
Sure, yeah. So continuing from where we left off, just thanking Glerkos for for his intervention. And I will immediately pass on now to an equally enlightening speaker, Professor Van Gofudakis, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at Indiana University, Purdue University in the United States. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Theo, for your invitation. And I'm very pleased to see so many people that I've known for years who have worked very hard for the solution of the Cyprus problem. Now, Claire has closed his presentation with a very, very challenging situation we're faced with, and that is the threat of a nuclear Turkey. I want to remind you that in 1998, Jim Karayanis, who also spoke earlier today, was involved in a major effort in Canada to stop the Akkuyu reactor in 1998, the first Turkish attempt to acquire nuclear power. There, with unity and coordination with our Canadian colleagues, we were able to stop that process. Unfortunately, now, the political situation has changed. We have Russia, we have Korea, we have Pakistan working with Turkey to get Turkey into the nuclear path. And that's not only an issue affecting Cyprus or Greece, it's an issue affecting also Israel, because Israel has some very definite interests in the area. And these are things that we should be discussing with all our allies, our neighbors, our colleagues. The threat is long-term. Claire Hoss also gave you an account of the evolution of Turkish policy. That is absolutely correct, because Turkey has always had extensive planning and thinking about the future. Their policy is not accidental. So what's going on in Cyprus today is the product of long-term planning, long-term thinking, and patience. That's why we are in the place we're in today. Now, let me make a few comments, because yesterday I was also involved in a 2-hour conference, on a Zoom conference, on the 47th anniversary of the Turkish invasion of Cyprus that was organized here in the States by various Greek American organizations. And it is edifying to see the presence of significant political figures from the United States who spoke openly and used words like invasion, occupation, ethnic cleansing, refugees, settlers, gross violations of human rights, and on and on. Now, I was very pleased to hear that, because lately I don't hear these words anymore from Cyprus. I'm going to be very critical of what is happening in the Cypriot negotiating track. I don't want to pour cold water on your thinking, your enthusiasm, or anything like that. However, I have lived the Cyprus problem since the early days, in the late 1950s. Tells you something about my age. But the fact is that if we don't wake up to the reality of what is happening in Cyprus and how the concessions that have come from the government of Cyprus over the years have brought us to the point where today we're talking about what happened in 47 years, how now Famagusta is going to be reopened by the Turkish government and so on. The Cypriot government has received a lot of pressure over the years to change its vocabulary when it talks about the Cyprus problem. For example, the OSCE, that many of you know from Europe, has presented even a proper vocabulary suggested to journalists and others how they can address the Cyprus problem. Words like invasion, occupation, violations of human rights, these have all gone out of the window. And the result is that now we're talking about solutions that are destructive to the Republic of Cyprus, and nobody really cares very much about the future of the Republic. More than that, if you remember the famous Annan Plan in 2004, millions of dollars were spent by the United States, England, and Germany to convince the Greek Cypriots to support the Annan Plan. The same thing is happening today. And the propaganda is carried out at various levels, including all sorts of NGOs that have sprung up all over the free areas of Cyprus, who are promoting the solutions that we see today proposed by Turkey and by countries that are not very much in favor of the sovereignty of the Republic of Cyprus. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a real problem because none of these so-called NGOs are native to Cyprus. They have come from the outside. They have been funded by foreign money, and they're trying to produce solutions that are compatible with what we saw with the Annan Plan and so on. Now, after 47 years, we have to take serious consideration of what we have not done, or with what we have done over the years to bring us to the point where we are today. Because today we still live under the so-called constitutional sophistry of the bizonal bicommunal federation, a concept that has no precedent in constitutional history, a concept that keeps evolving according to every mediator that has come through Cyprus over the years. It is couched in constructive ambiguity. That's the favorite negotiating tactic of Lord Honey and the late Richard Holbrooke, where they presented schemes, constitutional schemes that they did not understand, but they were vague enough to be able to be defended in front of a variety of audiences without those audiences understanding what exactly those schemes mean. So we're today then in front of a real challenge. But what have we done to abandon the fundamental positions Cyprus had on its problem after the invasion of 1974? We have abandoned all legal and political decisions of international organizations and European courts that were critical of Turkey. The government of the Republic of Cyprus does not speak anymore of invasion, occupation, ethnic cleansing, illegal colonization, and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, I had the pleasure or the unhappiness to read a lot of the documents that have been exchanged in the talks with the Turkish Cypriot community and Turkey. You'll not find the words Republic of Cyprus. You'll not find the words invasion. You'll not find the words human rights violations. More than that, we have now rounds of talks in which the Republic of Cyprus is not represented. More than that, the internationally recognized president of the Republic of Cyprus is not allowed to participate in that capacity. He appears only as a community leader at the same level of the Turkish Cypriot leader, who is not recognized as anything more by anybody in the international community. More than that, the EU is an observer. It's not a participant in the talks, even though the creation that will come out of the talks that we have on Cyprus today will still be a member of the EU. But right now, the EU is present only as an observer, intended to ratify all the derogations from the laws of the EU and the fundamental law of the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Annan Plan, there is a specific article, and that article keeps appearing and reappearing in the documents being exchanged now, that Greek Cypriots will not have the right to appeal to any European court on potential violations of European law under the new settlement in Cyprus. That's reality. They tried to impose it in 2004. They failed. They're still trying to impose it now. The question is why? Because we don't want European law to be part of the settlement of the Cyprus problem. Now, at the end of the day, remember the challenge that we are negotiating the future of the Republic of Cyprus in the absence of the Republic of Cyprus from the talks. Turkish violations continue. The problem is going to continue unless we change policy. That's the reality. No democratic state in Europe or elsewhere would really accept conditions. No democratic state in Europe would allow itself to sign its own death warrant. So, the recent concessions that have led us to Crown Montana and beyond are now coming home to roost with the proposals of Mr. Erdogan for a two-state solution and Anastasiadis' crazy concepts of halari synomospondia, loose confederations. These are unworkable concepts that are going to lead to the destruction of the Republic of Cyprus. I'll close by saying one thing. In 2004, it took a major united effort by all of us in Europe, in the US, in Canada, and elsewhere to get unity in the Greek Cypriot community and to get the no on the Annan Plan. If we don't do that today, we're going to be talking about Hamenes Patrides and loss of Greek Cypriot and other. This is the time to unite. This is the time to act. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Before I introduce Alexia, I would just like to agree with a lot of what you said. I think one comment I heard, and again, is from people who wanted to vote for the Annan Plan was, well, that's if we voted yes, we would have Barossi now. And that is the core of the issue and why we were right to say no. That was the only option we had in 2004. And we must at least be proud of ourselves for standing up for our rights at least once in 2004. And I agree with you that we need to do that again. And I've heard some excellent speeches, but I am from Famagusta. I am from Barossi. My father is 81. He tells me of the stories of Barossi and the pain he suffers. And I think we've got to change the dynamics. We know why we're here. We don't need to keep repeating it. What do we do now? And we have to show, as best we can, a position of strength. Anyway, as a Famagustan, I wanted to make those comments because I agree with you, Professor, wholeheartedly. Turning now to somebody who's very special, very well known to all Cypriots, very well loved by all Cypriots. Not only is she an artist, a singer, a passionate artist, and I agree with Klearchos when he mentioned theatre, the arts, music. Where do we find a way of channeling our pain? What's the best way? Music, theatre. We have no other channel. Politicians, some of them I would say have no emotions, but I'm got to be careful with what I say. They have no feelings. but that's another story. Alexia, thank you for being a passionate fighter, supporter for us. And you're going to give us the human perspective, which is often ignored. Thank you.
My dear compatriot, my dear fellow Famagustian, Costa, thank you for the wonderful introduction of me, of my person. I met you at the Lobby for Cyprus and dear friend Theo and our dear late Kyriakos Christodoulou and the dear Nick Kounouppias when I had the opportunity to come and perform for Cyprus, for you, in a collaborative concert in the UK, in London. And from that moment on, I felt that I had, my family grew bigger. I felt part of you. Even though we haven't co-created another performance, I still feel very much like I belong with you, with all of you. And I thank you. So yes, my name is Alexia. I'm a singer, composer, and I was born from Famagusta. But at the age of 10, I was forced to become a refugee, displaced person like hundreds of thousands of my compatriots. From that moment on, the world became a very unwelcome, a very hostile place for me. And I spent the rest of my life up to today to find a way to belong. And thank goodness that music provides the opportunity to express myself in many creative ways. And this I find healing. So what I also find healing is to sing with a purpose, to utilize this gift, this platform, and this belonging in music, to use it, to utilize it to offer my services, to help heal others who have been through a similar experience of a war, or to people who are in pain in general and are in need of some solace. So I live my life based upon this principle. I utilize music for the common good. So I recorded over 10 albums for Cyprus, the whole Cyprus, of course for Famagusta, but also for Kerinia, for Izokarpa, so for all our occupied territories, occupied land. And wherever I live in the world and I perform in the world, I always mention in a peace, with the intention of peace building manner. I speak about Cyprus wherever I am in the world. This trauma that I carry with me as a human being who has experienced the harshness of war and displacement, creativity alone is very important, but not enough. I believe in being of service to humanity. So for the past several years, I've been collaborating with the UN here in Cyprus, and I've been working in shelters with unaccompanied minor refugee children. So I found that this, because I know where they come from, what parts of, we share experiences, this has healed me more than anything that I've ever done. So I'm trying to see now. Music is a very, very powerful tool that I believe should be utilized even more in cultural diplomacy, especially by artists who have pure intentions. So I really believe that we should, us musicians should be allowed and encouraged and supported by governments and by all of you to facilitate creating dialogues through this different language of music. I'm sure all of us, all of you have a favorite song. I'm sure Erdogan must have a favorite song that can touch his soul and hopefully touch a part of his being that nothing else can pervade or touch. I did make some notes here, but I think that it's best if, yes, during the past years, I lived between Los Angeles, New York, and I travel wherever I perform, and I used to live in Greece, of course, for 20 years, another home for me. Having been away for many years of my life, most of my life after, when I went to study in Boston, I studied music at Berklee College of Music, lived in New York and performed, and then Greece for 20 years. I recorded with Mikis Theodorakis. We have a double album together, and it is another great home for me, a place where I belong in his music. So in one of the summers, 6 years ago, I had the need to travel to Famagusta during these dark, commemorate dark dates. For example, the July 14th, July 20th, and August 14th and 15th. I needed to go in these days and document my feelings there. So with my trusting associate, Valentina Canantoni, who's a child of a refugee, we traveled to, we paid by the checkpoints, and we went to Famagusta. I just wanted to clear my mind, my sense of hearing from the sounds of war. As I was documenting, remembering how my parents would take me to Constantia, then Constantia, on the Cyprus beautiful beach, and to passing by the Savoy to go to Yekaterini, where my house is, our house is. As I was walking and documenting, there was a Turkish, I think it was part of the police or the military, I don't know, tried to scare us, to use scare tactics, because he saw that we were probably documenting. And in an effort to appease him in a way, it's a term I heard by Mr. Koufoudakis, I think, Professor Koufoudakis earlier. We went to my home, which I'm able to visit, Cadova Rossini 21. I touched the gate. I didn't, feel like entering that day. I had to prepare myself emotionally. So the policeman or whatever saw us, and he left us alone. Mr. Hassanis, who used to live in Larnaca and now is the inhabitant with his wife of our home, told me, Ela mesa, in Spasta Kypriaga, in the Cypriot dialect. Ela mesa. Mr. Hassanis said, I'm not ready today to enter my home. He said, please, I want to show you your bedroom. He said, we fixed it. Because when my family, my mother and my father, in 2000, and my Aunt Mary in 2003, he showed us in his great sadness that the government here, the Turkish government, doesn't help them financially. So my bedroom had the ceiling had fallen. So this time he said, we fixed it. Come, I want to show you. So I entered. My heart couldn't take it. but because he was so kind and polite and accepting, I entered my home and I let him show me each room. And so I asked my social volunteer to please begin to document, because that was real and it was important. And so I would like to share with you the piece that I composed called Famagusta. And this is like a very real and raw documentation of that day. So I don't know what else I can say except for thank you, dear Lobby for Cyprus, dear all from the Lobby for Cyprus, for all the work that you have been doing in all these years. I always stand and always have stood by you. I believe that I maintain a positive disposition. I believe that Cyprus will become one single united country. I have to believe this, no matter what the circumstances show. So with this belief, I leave you, and I would like Theodora to assist us, please, in sharing this docu-video that we created. Thank you very, very much, all.
Thank you, Alexia.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also thank all the speakers who participated in today's communication, this very important communication. It was, I learned a lot. I kept taking notes, and which I will continue to study in depth. Thank you. The sound, please, Theodora, if possible. Thank you so much.
Oops, sorry.
I'm sorry to keep you waiting. It wasn't something that we had planned, so. where I used to sleep, his grandson now sleeps, who is also a musician. Now that I found extraordinarily eerie. He's a violinist. Yeah. I'll just add a sound from here. Φεύγω να θέλω να κόψω λίγο γιασεμί, να πάρω μαζί μου από το δέντρο της γιαγιάς μου, της γειτόνισσας μάλλον, και μου φώναξε μια Τουρκοκύπρια από το απέναντι σπίτι, μετά δεν τη γνώριζα, από την Πάφο μου λέει είμαι, και μου έδωσε δύο χούφτες, I'm sorry, I forgot. So as I was leaving, I wanted to take with me some jasmine. So I went to the neighbor's tree, and I tried to cut some jasmine blossoms, but then I heard a voice call me from the neighboring house, a woman I've never seen. She said, come, she said. I'm a refugee as well, I'm from Paphos. And she gave me, with her son, she gave me, I don't know, must be 100 blossoms, and I took them with me to Nicosia. So that was a very touching moment.
Should I stop there, Alexia, and then we can share the URL for everyone to watch?
Thank you. Pardon me?
Thank you. So I will share the URL for everyone to watch the full movie.
Sorry about the trouble. Thank you, Theodora.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Theo, over to you.
Thank you, Theodora. Well, it's fascinating, isn't it, to see that a Turkish Cypriot is welcoming us to our home, but how friendly they are, how compassionate they are. And why can't we just sit down with these normal Turkish Cypriots and resolve the Cyprus issue? Why do we need the politicians in the way when we can, as they say, we can live together? But as Kostas was saying previously, well, was it Kostas saying about politicians? Politicians have another agenda, and their agenda is not necessarily the people's agenda. But thank you, Alexia, because that just reminds us of the love and the passion that we have for our fellow citizens. And I think that's so important to pass such a message on to everyone. And I hope Turkish Cypriots are actually viewing this tonight and can then think the way we are thinking and go and challenge their authorities and continue challenging them, wanting, a peaceful and a liberated Republic of Cyprus. So thank you very much, Alexia. Thank you.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, Philip Christopher was supposed to be part of the speakers of tonight, but he was called, as I briefly mentioned, by Washington, D.C., to go to Washington, D.C. for a meeting. But he sent us a short message to us, and I'd just like to read it out. Let me just get rid of this, unfortunately. Sorry. There we are. Thank you. A short message that he sent to us. As we commemorate the 47th dark anniversary of the illegal Turkish invasion and continued occupation, we are also taking action to reverse the decision of Turkey to transfer parts of the Varosha to Turkish Cypriot control in violation of the United Nations security resolutions. We applaud the strong statement from the US Secretary of State Blinken and the chairman of the US Senate Foreign Relations, Robert Menendez. We call on the UN Security Council to take immediate action to reverse the decision of Turkey. I regret that I cannot join you today, but I wish to salute your efforts and extend my personal thanks to all your members. The work goes on, the hope endures, and the dream of a free, united Cyprus will never die. Philip. Thank you to Philip for his very kind words. Such a passionate Gerignodi. Well, we have next a gentleman. I call him a gentleman because this man has spent his whole life supporting our cause. An artist, a man who has put some words into the theater and passed our message through the theater here in the United Kingdom. And George, I've been watching you just listening silently there. And now I would like to give you the platform now, because I know that we're going to hear some tough talk. George.
Thank you. I agree with Alex here that the arts can play a very important role in solving our problem and lightening ourselves and our enemies for a right solution of the Republic of Cyprus. There is a solution of the Republic of Cyprus. It's the Republic itself. Why we seek a bizonal bicommunal federation, which is, as our speakers before said, Van said it, is improper, it doesn't exist, it doesn't mean anything. And by chance, the Cyprus is not only two communities, not by communal, it's multi-communal, multicultural. There are Armenians, Maronites, there are English, there are Russians, there are so many international community. So there is the solution. It is the Republic of Cyprus, which is the only state recognized, legal, recognized all over the world. Why abandon it? Why don't we tell our Cypriot compatriots who already have Cypriot passports, because they can travel all over the Europe, and to enlighten them that to be a minority is not a crime. It is a fact of life. As we are a minority in England, we are 300,000 people. We are a minority, but we don't claim equal rights with the majority. We have, as individuals, right? Every person has one vote, and the same applies to the Turkish Cypriot, one vote for the future of Cyprus. And I hope they will vote for the Republic of Cyprus, abandon the bizonal bicommunal federation. This is illegal, and we have to enlighten our government to use the right language. One of the speakers said about using the right language, called Erdogan a thug. Well, I call him a criminal, a war criminal that should be arrested and put into jail for what he did to Varosha recently, let alone what he did to the whole of Cyprus. The man is crazy. The man, he wants to revive the Ottoman Empire, which is dead. I mean, the empire died 200 years ago. He wants to revive. It's an illusion, a delusion. He has to be enlightened or get rid of him or be assassinated like Mentenesius. So the future of Cyprus is a new movement to enlighten, to use the right language, and talk about the Republic of Cyprus, which exists for all of us. Greeks, Turks, Armenians, Maronites, English, Russians, international community. That is the way forward. We need a new movement, a new party in Cyprus, the Republic of Cyprus Party, because the two main parties, Lisi and Agel, agreed to surrender to Turkey, and that is wrong. Maybe a movement from London will start to Cyprus, a Republic of Cyprus Party. I've written a play recently because I had a stroke 3 years ago, and about a year ago I had a fall, and I spent 2 weeks in a hospital, University College Hospital, where I met an old Turkish Cypriot man, Mehmet, who spoke two ancient Greek words, Don Baleon Barikion, and that inspired me to write the play, A Game of Golf, Don Baleon Barikion. And if anybody wants to read it, I could send it to you, but I plan to do it in October. And please come and see it. It is an enlightening play about the role of Britain in Cyprus and how we can influence the foreign ministry to stop supporting the by Commonwealth Federation, but to support the Republic of Cyprus. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George, for everything that you do and continue to do. So moving on now to our final commentator, Fanoula Argyro, who is a well-known journalist and author and researcher. Fanoula, over to you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you, Theodora. And thank you, Theo and Lobby for Cyprus for the invitation to have this little contribution. I will be very short. Cyprus is a victim of 2 premeditated Turkish invasions and ever since 1974 continued occupation, violation of human rights, unprecedented impunity afforded to Turkey by the international community for all its crimes, ethnic cleansing, and all that goes with those violations. The Republic of Cyprus needs urgently a new strategy, and as Dr. Koufoudakis has stressed, to abandon British Turkish devices, segregationist, bicommunal, bizonal federation, and call upon the international community at the United Nations and the European Union for liberation of our country, of our island, from Turkish occupation, respect for democracy, the rule of law, return of all refugees to their stolen properties, restoration of rights, repatriation of Turkish colonies, and bring to justice Turkey for her crimes. Impunity continues since 1974. We need a constitution, we need a democracy in Cyprus, one man, one vote. For 47 years, foreign planners are trying to impose on our island a destructive so-called solution in the name of BBF, bizonal federation. Well, as long as they continue succeeding in dragging with them our obedient leaders in the island, although the majority of the people have realized what BBF means, and indeed we rejected it with the referendum in 2004 by 76%, the Greeks on the island, Cyprus is doomed to be taken in whole by Turkey. Dr. Nihat Erim's 1956 plan will finally come to fruition in its final chapter. And let me say this, and this is official, that Turkey continues to support obediently Dr. Nihat Erim's plan, which was to take over Cyprus. And that was November 1956, as Dr. Klearchos has said. Whether the solution is called federation, confederation, loose or tight, two states. And let me say, the British on the 3rd of January 1964, in the Foreign Office, they had decided and they were planning, they were studying a solution of reconstructing the Republic of Cyprus, which they created in 1960, in two separate states, one for the Greeks and one for the Turks, North and South. The same way, in April 1964, in parallel, the Turks in Cyprus had also issued documents for a federal solution for Cyprus, Northern Cyprus, and Southern Cyprus. Well, so all this today we hear from Ersin Tatar that he wants to state, and Erdogan are nothing new. The Dutch wanted two states. They always wanted two states and partition and all the rest. And let me say this, the basic element for all these so-called solutions is the BBF. So do not get tricked that Turkey abandoned BBF, because we hear this lately. This is the BBF is the backbone of all these kind of solutions. And I close by saying ignorance of history is the worst that can happen to a nation. Our little country in the Mediterranean deserves better. And before I just say thank you and goodbye, let me add 2 words about Professor Tim Botswain's statement that he had, the exchange he had with Sir Michael. I saw a British document in the National Archives at Kew, exactly on those lines. Sir Michael was giving his opinion to the then Foreign Secretary for Commonwealth, James Callaghan, in 1974, between the first and the second invasion. And he told him exactly that. And even more, he said the Turks and Turkey doesn't give a fig for the Turkish Cypriots. It's Cyprus they want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manuela, for summarizing a lot of the key points, but also answering in part a lot of the questions that we have had. And we have actually had a lot of questions. Thank you for them. You can view them because I've now released them all. If I group them together, I guess the 3 questions are, firstly, that clearly our issue is with Turkey. Turkey is the occupier, Turkey is in control of the occupied area, and Turkey is the one that is ignoring and continuously violating international law. And a lot of the questions are asking, is international law not binding? Can we not do something to enforce these laws and agreements against Turkey? The second question, which is quite popular, is what about the UK? The UK has both ethical and legal obligations when it comes to Cyprus, and so far it has failed to fulfill any of its legal obligations. So again, what can we do there? And just a general question from people who have clearly been enjoying the speeches and have learned a lot and now want to play their part is, what can individuals do to help? And if I just quickly deal with the final question, which is what can individuals do to help? Every little thing that every single individual does builds up. It counts. So engage on the issue of Cyprus, especially with non-Cypriots who may not know what is going on in Cyprus. And of course, as someone mentioned, are looking to social media, which is dominated by the Turkish narrative. Use social media to engage. Lobby for Cyprus often tweets very powerful and strong messages. It's the hard work is done for you. All you need to do is retweet, like, and comment, contact your members of parliament, make them aware of the issue, tell them that you care, make them care. Don't be afraid to contact journalists and correct them when they get it wrong. I mean, today, the social media has been full of horrendous articles by a number of different newspapers getting the terminology wrong, getting the history wrong. So just reach out and contact them. So on that, I don't know if anyone would like 30 seconds, final words to summarize. I know that we are gone past the 2.5 hours that we had planned, so thank you all for staying here. But if anyone would like to make any final comments or answer any of those questions, just unmute yourself and let me know. So does anyone have anything to add, or we're going to wrap up?
International law. Claire.
Yeah. Claire.
Yes, thank you for the questions. I'll deal with the one on whether international law is binding. Yes, it is binding on Turkey, and it's also something that the Republic of Cyprus ought to be utilizing on a daily basis. The fundamental problem that we've had is that Turkey appears not only to have breached the United Nations Charter of 1945, it's also breached multiple instruments of international law that govern the occupation that has arisen as a result of the two invasions of 1974. The Geneva Conventions of 1949 are the classic cases in point. What I've been campaigning for a number of years is for the law of occupation to be upheld and applied. For that to happen, the Republic of Cyprus has got to stop playing this bicommunal game that they've been playing over the last few years. It's been played out during the pandemic. Instead of the government of the Republic of Cyprus calling for the provisions in the Geneva Conventions to be applied, and they include a provision on epidemics, which could be applicable to pandemics, the Republic of Cyprus has chosen to subordinate itself to bicommunalism. So they've been utilizing the bicommunal committee on health to deal with the pandemic. That's just one example of where the law of occupation, which should be applied, is not being applied by the Republic of Cyprus. The second thing that needs to happen, and I'll wrap up with this, is that the Republic of Cyprus ought to call for the formation of an international war crimes tribunal to deal with the alleged, and it would appear actual, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and other international crimes that have been inflicted in the Republic of Cyprus, largely but not solely by Turkey. For that to happen, however, the Republic of Cyprus has to go to the Security Council and ask for the Security Council to adopt an appropriate resolution, preferably under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter. That's what happened in 1993, which resulted in the formation of the International War Crimes Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. Unless the perpetrators of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and other international crimes are brought to justice, the culture of impunity that bedevils the Republic of Cyprus is going to continue. And I'll just wrap up with one final thought. The so-called Cyprus problem as it existed in 1974 has morphed into something even more wicked than it originally was. And all I have to do is draw your attention to the prevalence of what appears to be child trafficking and other forms of human trafficking in the occupied area that is taking place with impunity, and hardly anybody is batting an eyelid to. And for me, that is the most ghastly consequence of the occupation, the impunity that appears to have been granted to paedophiles and other people who are engaging in the most unspeakable of crimes to the detriment of children. And they're getting away with it because there is no proper law enforcement in the occupied area, and the law of occupation is not being applied. So that's a slightly long answer to a very good question on international law and its relevance. Thank you.
Yes, no, thank you so much for that, Claire, because as you say, human rights law is only one element of the legal framework. Humanitarian law, the law of occupation, and international criminal law are more powerful when it comes to Cyprus. And Turkey's impunity should end, not only in the areas that you spoke about when it comes to trafficking, but also for the crimes it committed in Cyprus and which are documented. And one example is, of course, what we refer to as the missing, but in fact, that is a nice way of saying those who were forcibly and forced disappearances, and those who have been found, there is evidence of executions. So there is a wealth of evidence there, and not forgetting that the fenced-off area of Famagusta is in itself a crime scene, which is currently being whitewashed by Turkey in front of our eyes. So thank you for that. Would anyone else say anything, or Theo, do you want to close the meeting?
Well, I wanted to just mention the press statement from the US, Antony Blinken, his press statement of yesterday. And there's a sentence here that that he quotes, and I just wanted to put a question myself after I read this out. The United States is working with like-minded partners to refer this concerning situation to the UN Security Council and will urge a strong response. Now, if Turkey is not abiding by the UN Resolution 550 and 789, what UN resolution can be imposed that will stop Turkey? Are we looking at sanctions, military sanctions, economic sanctions? Because certain countries can only listen if they are actually internally affected by sanctions. So can somebody just comment on that? So maybe Van, what could you say, or what are your thoughts on the UN?
Well, Theo, the reality is words are wonderful. Actions count. The sanctions are very much part of what we ought to be aiming at from now on.
Yeah. Good, thank you. Thank you. I will like to thank, does anybody else wanted to say anything before I close?
Yes, please.
Alexia, yes.
My dear Theo, I found this rewarding, this communication, this dialogue that happened among us. And I would like it to continue somehow. I mean, I find it very fruitful. And even though actions, I agree with you, Professor, are much more important than words, sometimes words and the exchange of ideas may lead to actions. So closing from my part, I would like to say that I believe in assuming responsibility, in not, because we've been giving our power and our responsibility to transferring it to politicians only. So I agree with Theodora, we should all do what we can, all of us. And us who are like-minded, I find it very fruitful to, beneficial to all of us to have dialogues. And that's all.
Alexia, thank you.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Alexia, thank you so much. Yes, thank you to all the panelists, the speakers, and the commentators. And I'm sorry.
A couple of words. Can I say add a couple?
Yeah, of course, George. Yes. Sorry,
Yes,
I didn't. Sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
The artists have to have the last word, it seems. I'm sorry.
Liga, Turkey does not recognize the Republic of Cyprus, and yet she still insists that she's a guarantor power. How could she be a guarantor power in a country that she doesn't recognize? And she keeps saying that she does it for her brother Cypriots. She doesn't care a damn about the Turkish Cypriots. The Turkish Cypriots should abandon Turkey as we did. Greece abandoned the junta, the junta Greece. They should abandon Turkey and should unite with the Greek Cypriots. That's my message.
George, thank you. I think that's, we'll close on that, I think, George, and we will continue with our future seminars. And I'd like to thank all the main speakers, panelists, and commentators. I feel that we have so many people who are still, after 2 hours, 45 minutes or so, still listening. And the questions that were addressed to the speakers and so forth were very enlightening and demanding. Thank you all. And for wherever you are, enjoy the evening or the afternoon. And we'll see you very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.